Hey everyone, welcome to Anarchapulco TV, your home for the world's premier Liberty Conference happening February 13th through the 16th in Acapulco, Mexico, right around the corner. This is David Rodriguez here with a special guest, actually a main stage speaker guest today. And I just want you to meet him because he's talking about some really important subjects, not just this year, but last year on the advocacy stage. But it's really important for intergenerational freedom, and that's what we're doing. We're spreading the peace, the love, intergenerational freedom. We see his daughter here today. We're super happy to have her. And just so you can meet him and learn about some of the projects that he's been working on and why he's an advocate for freedom. So before we get into that, he is a not governor, Patrick Smith. He's clearly a father, an activist, philosopher, and someone who I think you guys should all meet. So welcome to the show, Patrick.
Hey, thanks for having me. I love talking about everything you just said, so I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited. This is the 6th year we've been holding in Acapulco, and it just keeps on getting bigger. There's other events that are starting up, and people are starting to realize that the left-right paradigm is terrible, and the whole statist entity is organized crime based on coercion. And so there's a new awakening that's happening. I know you're seeing it there and where you're located. So if you just want to share with people a little bit about who you are and why you are advocating for freedom and anything at all, and we'll get into some of the main stage talks you're going to be sharing, but just kind of a little bit about your background and why you care about freedom so much.
Well, this one right here, actually, that's why I care about freedom so much. Like if it was just me, okay, I can be selfish and just kind of want to live a life where people leave me alone. But once we choose to have children and to create life, it's sort of, we take on a positive obligation to make the world into the best possible place that we can leave it for them.
Right.
And so I became an anarcho-capitalist voluntarist around the same time as her slightly older brother was cooking. And
Nice.
as part of the like principal world-changing paradigm shift of understanding that you've been surrounded by violence basically your entire, or at least threats of violence basically your entire life,
right,
comes with the fact that by your own hand, you are carrying out and sort of setting up this violence and this threat of violence in your children through the expectations, through how you parent them. And so not only did I have that sort of voluntarist moment where, where the world is spinning and it's like, what is even real right now? And then you kind of have to put it back together. But at the same time, I was on the clock. I have humans coming into this world, and I'm realizing that spanking and the traditional, like forceful parenting, traditional parenting, is off the table, is not an option.
Yeah.
And it was never like, a moment where I was like, well, I'll evaluate and decide if it's on the table. No, the principles are crystal clear. They're dead, stupid, like childlike, simple.
Yeah.
And you can't argue with them. You can't defeat them. You can't half-ass them. It is as simple as it sounds. We don't hit people to get what we want. And so it was a scramble. It was a terrifying scramble to not only figure out this new voluntarism and the philosophy behind it. And, I was into philosophy for years before I even came to this. It was my journey through philosophy that led me to these conclusions because I kept trying to defeat my prior arguments over and over and over. And in doing so, I just led myself right to the most consistent positions, which is this. So I had a very short amount of time to figure out what the hell I was doing in terms of parenting. And I realized I had almost no tools in the toolbox, but we can get into that later.
Yeah.
Are you having fun?
No, it is. I think it is. I mean, the children are the most vulnerable. They mirror us. They model us. They depend on us for food and shelter. It's like they are the most like fragile human beings. And for, I don't know, some of the listeners out there yourself, like I was spanked growing up and you're processing it. I forgave my parents, mostly my mother, right? But it was like, she says, this hurts me more than it hurts you. And I'm like, how does that make any sense? And later I'm like, oh, she's like spanking me because she doesn't want me to live a bad life. Okay. And then, like it's intergenerational, the definition of the state for me that I got from Howard, or I should say, Etienne de la Boetie, is that it's intergenerational organized crime. And so it's passed down. And so my parents didn't have any tools. And so now we're kind of growing and raising young people in the information age. So now we have tools. And so now we got to deprogram ourselves so we're not using coercion and threats and violence against these little people, because I mean, that really is where the fundamentals of being a human being grow and exist, is like in our house, like this mother and father that loves me so much. Why are they spanking me? Why are they hitting me? And using the correct language also, I think, is really powerful. I'm curious what your thoughts are. Like back in the day when Stefan Molyneux was, more on the voluntarist freedom train, I was like, wow, yeah, it's not spanking, it's hitting. And so as you just mentioned, you don't hit people to get your goals or to get things that you want. You want to talk about that, importance of language, or maybe some, I don't know, defining moment where you're able to clarify, like, man, this is actually abusing children, and this is like incongruent with my core values.
Well, I mean, there's so many caveats and asterisks that go into talking about Molyneux these days that I don't even want to go into it, like as far as the man himself, but you cannot take away the credit from the man for introducing me to these concepts and and challenging me to defend the position of hitting somebody because I loved them. So credit where it's due. Credit where it's due for that. Thank you, Stefan Molyneux, for that. I appreciate it. That is the last I care to say about that man. But no, he's changed my life. He's changed he's literally changed these ideas, I should say. These ideas, these principles have changed literally every relationship in my life, the relationships with my children, the relationships with all of my family, all of my friends. It had literally, irrevocably, and for all time and space in the lineage of the Smith family gene pool has ended violence. Like, my children are not going to magically grow up and start hitting their kids. That will literally, the thought won't even occur to them. And when somebody says, well, do you spank? They're like, what? Why would you do that? So that's epic. And so, man, I've always been motivated towards activism in one way or another. I've always wanted to not only just make things better for myself selfishly, but I want to make things better for everyone. I want to improve the world. I want to, we are alive. Our atoms are stuck together in this universe for such a brief moment that it's like a comet that hits the atmosphere of the Earth, and it explodes in fire and light, and the light fills the sky, and then it just zips through the atmosphere and vanishes. It just burns out and it's gone. And so, damn it, if I'm going to burn out I am going to burn as bright as I can. I'm going to do as much as I can. I'm going to talk to as many people as I can. I am going to, I want the world to be seeing the fire in the sky from my life for generations. And and so then it's like, well, how do you do that? How do you make your life meaningful, right? And I have done most of the different primary forms of activism that you can imagine. I even began the process of starting a community of activists to bring together the different facets of activism. We have, like, first there's the Libertarian Party, political activism. You having fun? Numbers? Okay. So there's like political activism, which is mostly useless and sends kind of the wrong message to the entire world. Then you have like street activism, which is where you're going out and kind of breaking laws and doing it in a way to get publicity. Then you have media, like what we're doing right now. You have the thinkers, the philosophers that spend time thinking about this stuff, working out the ethics, writing papers, producing content on it. You have the charity activists that are really good at organizing and getting resources to help people that are in their times of need. So you have all these different kinds of activism, and it's just trying to figure out, like, what do I do to make the biggest difference? And I literally have done just about all. I have, and I don't say this to brag, I just say it to kind of show people what I've tried and how much I've tried and the areas that I've experienced. I have pushed literal guillotines that we built in my front yard in the middle of my neighborhood up the steps of the biggest county courthouse in the state, I believe, here in Texas to make the statement that they are losing the consent of the governed, and we will stand up for ourselves by any means necessary. Every year we participate in an event called Feed the Need here in Dallas, where it's illegal to feed the homeless in Dallas. I know, whatever. It's just insane.
Unbelievable, man. Ridiculous.
So what do? Well, we do it anyway because immoral laws are immoral. And what better example to show the normie public of what you're supposed to do when confronted with evil is you're supposed to defy it and do good anyway, right? Mm-hmm. And so we feed the homeless, but we do it very well armed and wide out in the open with a lot of people. And so we both make the statement that we're going to help people, we're going to do good, and when the government makes doing good illegal, we're going to do it anyway, but we're going to use the tools necessary to defend ourselves from that evil. So that's another type of activism. Yeah. I've spent years building one of the world's largest anarcho-capitalist voluntarist communities here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Now, this is just like a place for people to find friends and
talk about that. That's very interesting because when you said that at the advocacy stage last year, I was like, wow, I got to learn about that. And so now we're learning about that. Talk about what it is or how did you do it? Because I think this could really inspire and educate other people on like what they could be doing in their own local communities.
Sure. So as the people that have gone to Anarchapulco before have realized, maybe for the first time, it is like when you enter an environment where you're surrounded by people that understand the non-aggression principle, understand voluntarism, understand the basic principles of existence absent coercion. Yeah, exactly. There is something, and I don't talk about magic very often, but there is something truly magical about that moment. Yeah. You want to get down? Okay. There you go. All right. And when you leave after having experienced that the first time, my first time was actually in Austin. There's a voluntarist group in Austin, Texas, where, I just dropped by and I said, oh, I'll see what they're anarchists. They're probably going to be freaks, whatever. But I ended up spending like an entire afternoon surrounded by some of the best, most ethical, most principled people I've ever met, and they were able to debate and have good conversations, and it was just amazing. It was life-changing. And then I come home to Dallas and I've got nothing. There's nobody around like that, whatever. So I'm sure people have experienced that coming to Anarchapulco.
Yeah.
And so I set about trying to figure out how to build that. How do we make that? How do we develop a framework where people can come together, not for the purposes of activism, not for the purposes of anything else, just to have good people around you, like actual good, awake people around you. And so, that was what my talk was about last year. So that's another big form of activism, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I guess what I'm trying to say is I've done the risky stuff, the crazy street stuff with weapons and guillotines and breaking the law and defying the police. I've done the media for years now. My channel, Disenthrall, and the stuff that we do there, make tons of content, debate people, talk about philosophy and ethics. I've done all this stuff, but I'm telling you, I promise you that the most effective form of activism, the way that we actually change the world, is by changing how we parent our children. And that sounds like a letdown, right? I'm like, oh, you push guillotines and carry guns and break laws and do risky stuff in the boogaloo and, all this stuff, right? And then I say, okay, well, parent better. That's how you actually change the world. It's like, wait, what? Hear me out.
Right.
With the environment you create in your home, and I'll be saying probably this exact same words from the main stage.
Feel free to talk about the main stage talk you're going to be giving.
Yeah. And I'm sorry if I'm just going on endlessly. Interrupt me if you need to.
No, this is what it's about.
Yeah, so the main stage talk this year will be Beyond Peaceful Parenting, principled parenting.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, in the same way that being an anarchist tells people what you don't want. You do not want a ruler. We don't want violence and coercion used on people to get your way. It doesn't speak to what we do want or what we should do. And there are a few people out there trying to teach people how to parent and how, especially unschooling. There's a lot of good unschooling content creators in the space and good speakers at Anarchapulco. And what I'm trying to do is move from what we've all know and agree with now. It's kind of like, okay, we're settled. We got peaceful parenting. Don't hit our kids. Got it. But now what do I do? Like when my kid refuses to brush his teeth, when the doctor, has to give him, let's say, this life-saving shot or something that, and the kid is refusing, how do you handle these seemingly impossible or seemingly difficult yet normal parenting situations? Like this is like parenting 101. Your kid needs to brush his teeth and eat healthy and, have a decent bedtime if they're, make sure they get enough sleep at least, maybe not the bedtime specifically, but like it's not enough to say don't hit your kids. You need more. You need principles behind how you're actually parenting, because the environment you create in your home will create humans that enter the world with a certain set of expectations on the world. And if you parent them how kids have always been parented for hundreds, thousands of years, forcefully spank them, hit them when they don't behave how you want them to behave, ground them, take their stuff, or whatever, all the typical peaceful parenting stuff, then you create a human that when it hits adulthood expects there to continue to be an authority over them in their life, controlling them, regulating them, punishing them when they disobey and don't do as they're told. They expect that to be there. And so I tell people, we're having a lot of this boogaloo talk recently, where like if the boogaloo popped off today and there was some revolution, what do you think would happen tomorrow? Well, we still have a lot of people that have not been woken up. And we still have a lot of people that expect that authority figure to be there. So if you pop off the boog today and you do your revolution today, your big igloo today, you're going to have a lot of people that abolish one government but still have that expectation and would then demand a replacement government.
Yep.
And the only way you do that is by one at a time talking to people. Credit to Larkin Rose for Candles in the Dark. If you haven't checked out that, please do. He's doing it at Anarchapulco, and he has an online version as well now.
Absolutely. Very powerful.
But the only other way is to create people that don't enter the world as new adults with an expectation of having an overlord controlling their entire life. And the way you do that is by principled parenting, which is what I'm going to be talking about on the main stage. I'm going to be talking about, and I'm not just pie in the sky stuff. We're not going to talk chakras and all that stuff. There's plenty of people at Anarchapulco that enjoys doing that. I am here to give practical how to. Like, here is the principle that we all agree on as voluntarists. Right. Here's how it should look implemented in your child's life, in your home. How do we create a voluntarist society in our home so that that's the expectation when the kid reaches adulthood? Right. I'm really trying to keep it practical. And the last thing maybe I can say on it is that unfortunately, because of my children's medical situation, my daughter has leukemia. We have been subjected to a medical process that is a constant list of non-optional medical intrusions. And so from a voluntarist principled parent's perspective of trying to give the child literally as much sort of agency and self-ownership and control over their life as possible, but then here comes this 18-wheeler full of almost daily things that they don't want to do. It's kind of it's kind of like the worst case scenario, like the hardest way to. It's like if you talk about implementing principles in a situation that's already peaceful, let's say, that's easy. There's almost not even any virtue in it. If there's no conflict, there's no virtue. If nobody's doing anything wrong, then you don't have to stand up for anything. So it's kind of easy to be a voluntarist. But when you're in a situation where you're a rock in a hard place, you're up against something that has to happen, it's mandatory or really bad things happen. Yeah. How do you handle that as a voluntarist? How do you maintain that principled parenting environment in your home while going through some of the worst, least optional, least voluntary sort of situations imaginable? So I think we've learned a lot. We have, and I don't want to, you can't say this because it's never going to be true if you say it like this, but the best way to describe it is my kids have become stronger in their self-ownership by having that self-ownership put to the test. And by having us as parents in situations where normal parents wouldn't have stood up for their self-ownership, even against, roomfuls of medical doctors and nurses trying to make something happen now, and I'll talk more about this on the main stage, having their parent be on their side, the kid's side, saying, no, my kid said no, We're going to wait. We're going to talk through this. We're going to discuss it. We're going to make our case, and we're going to try and negotiate through this before you run up and hold the kid down and subject them to whatever you're going to do, which is the standard operating procedure in hospitals. Every time we take her to clinic, you hear the shrieks of kids in other rooms on all sides. It's like a torture chamber almost when you go in there. It sounds like people are being tortured all around you. It's because they don't ask for these other kids. These people swoop into the room and just make it happen. That's the word that they use. They make it happen. Anyway, I don't want to give my whole talk now. But
no, that brings up a good point, because I'm in California and I'm connected to like the forced vaccine movement and people awakening, and like, so they're, lovely people, but they're awakening to like, oh, this is about body ownership. Whose body is it? The state's coming in there. So it's like, it's kind of pushing them towards voluntarism. And so there's an educational process, but the question is like, what do you do about CPS? So CPS can be called for medical neglect or for educational neglect. Or if your 8-year-old or 10-year-old is walking down the street and some nosy neighbor just says, hey, there's a kid walking by itself. I mean, those are all 3 reasons why people are getting called on CPS. So have you had to deal with, I don't know what they call it in Texas, but that agency in the hospitals dealing with like shots or drugs or something like that? And how have you dealt with that?
I mean, it's a threat. It is a threat to the wholeness and safety of your family. And it's the people that think they're heroes. It's the people that think they're saving you from yourself that are the most, I don't know if we can cuss on the show, effing humans on the planet are the ones that think they're helping you. So, we have situations without too specific. When my daughter has been taught her whole life, for example, and I'm going to talk about this on the main stage because this is the rubber meets the road of voluntarism and self-ownership, ladies and gentlemen. When my daughter says no to a doctor to her face, in that way that a self-owner says no to somebody, not like, like most kids, they're like, no, I don't want to do that. No, please don't. I don't want to do that. My kid looks at the doctor in the eye and says, no, thanks. and the doctor doesn't know what to do with that. And then so the doctor looks at me and I'm like, well, she said no, thanks. You heard her, right? Don't you dare do that thing you were about to do. I'm 6'6", people aren't going to do things to my daughter that are not allowed to, when she says no. That's all I'm saying. I don't want to give up the talk because it's a good talk, but the dynamic of the kid knowing that the dad is going to be the dad and protect her consent and protect her bodily integrity come hell or high water, it's the most powerful lesson you can teach your kid. It gives them so much confidence. But anyway, to answer your question, so the doctor then over time begins to get the impression that there's something wrong with your kid. Like they're defiant. Like this kid isn't deferring to us. And for some reason, the parents are not, forcing our will on them. They're not taking our side. So it must mean that there's either something wrong with the parenting or there's something wrong with the child. And so therapy gets suggested. Well, have you put her into XYZ type of therapy to help her deal with being made to do things?
Right.
And just the logic of what I just said.
They call it oppositional disorder. Defiance disorder. It's an actual condition in the DSM for pharmaceutical drugs. It's like, oh, she's got oppositional defiance disorder. It's like, did you just make that up? Pretty much that's what they do to sell their drugs. And it's like they will, because they've been indoctrinated in their own schools of the medicines and the hospitals and stuff. So they actually label that. And this is the crazy part. It's like they are in their own belief, their own lens, how they see the world. So they're genuinely trying to do that. I'm sure there's some doctors or nurses who understand it's a scam and they're just trying to make money. But like there are genuine people like, no, yeah, that's a problem. And so when they do that, this is like serious. I think Arizona is really well known for like medical kidnap type situations. And so this year we have a couple people who are bringing some like law type solutions to the conversation. They're not going to be on the main stage. They're going to be on the family camp stage, but this is a real problem. So I'm looking forward that people can learn from you and hear how you deal with that, because it is like the rubber meets the road, as you said. When our children see that we got their back And, I do homeschool consulting. So when I'm talking with parents, again, they went to the school system of coercion. And so we have to deprogram their understanding of what are we after, And so we look at our child, and as I reflect on that, it's like, I just wanted to feel loved. I wanted to feel accepted. And that was about it. There wasn't much more I desired from my mother, my father, or family members. And so the schools try to push all these things and, have you get ready for college when you're in kindergarten. It's like, no, let's back the truck up and realize we're trying to have a relationship. And the fact that you got your daughter's back when she says no thank you directly to the doctor's face, man, that's legendary, man. I really hope to hear more about that on the stage.
Yeah, and so that's just to finish answering your question. Yeah, so if the doctor asks, why don't you do some therapy to solve this? If you don't do the therapy, who does the doctor call second? Right. If they think you're being negligent in your care of your child, well, they're taught that the right thing to do is to call probably the most terroristic organization that's part of government, which would 100%. Be the CPS, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So, yeah, it's a challenge for sure.
Yeah, and what's really the other side of the coin is that many of these people are mandated reporters. So again, the state just invents these laws and they say, well, if you see neglect and you don't say something, now you can be liable. It's kind of like in the military, you get court-martialed if you don't obey a command to go kill some innocent people. It's like, no, you're part of this hierarchy. You sign the contract and we'll pull your license, we'll put you in jail. So the state is just based on fear, as many of us know. And so as you can see behind me, the theme this year is evolve. We want to evolve beyond coercive relationships, transcend the state. The Buckminster Fuller quote that you never change reality by fighting against it. You got to make the old model obsolete with something better, with something superior. So I think that's what you're talking about here. And as you mentioned, there's so many cool things you can talk about from your talk, but we just want to keep it short because there's so many things that you can reveal. And I know the people, are sure have a lot of stuff that they're doing, but we can talk about freedom. So if you're coming to Anarchapulco, you're going to have, 1,000 people or plus, there on the beaches, by the pools. And we have 4 stages. Patrick's going to be on the main stage. We have the crypto stage if you're interested in Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, blockchain, the health stage. Again, this is kind of related to what you're talking about, and actually true health practitioners. There's actually going to be genuine doctors and people who want to heal you and prevent disease on site. There's a clinic for the first time this year. And then the family camp stage, which I'm running and bringing these kind of conversations to you, about CPS or there's another lady called Nova Ohm. She was able to conquer the CPS. And I think the last part here, actually, because you did something about community, and I'm going to be talking about that also on the main stage, but the importance of community and finding your people in real life. I think this might be also the next phase in the growth of the consciousness of freedom. And we connected online. We found each other. Now it's like, I don't want to live by status, So I have this idea of voluntary villages or people have intentional communities. Can you share maybe just a few thoughts on intentional communities or actually surrounding yourselves with people who are not going to use coercion and force on you or your children?
Yeah. So, outside of your own mind, if you don't have anybody else around you that understands the non-aggression principle or voluntarism, you're kind of powerless. You're caught in the waves of the ocean, pushing you wherever they want to go. Yeah. The more people you have around you, the more of a ship that you're in instead of just a guy on a raft, so to speak. And you can start to cooperate and solve each other's problems without having to, appeal to or, utilize government coercively paid for institutions. You can just have that check and balance because, life throws all kinds of stuff at you. And a lot of things, a lot of people would say, well, there's a lot of things in the gray area around the non-aggression principle. It's not that simple, that it's not that simple is like the siren's call of somebody that's compromising their morals as we speak. But, so having people around you to bolster your own morals, to bolster your own ethical, virtuous living, to hold you to your principles, it's huge. It's powerful. And man, there's nothing like it. It feels great. It's makes it just, life is awesome.
Yeah, I have to say, I agree, man. Like when you meet other people who are moral and principled and doing the best that they can, but they have a basic moral code, a moral compass. Like I went to college and I didn't even heard that term before. And then you start to see what's going on, with Ron Paul's election, years ago, and like, oh, morality, what is this? Like I wasn't even exposed to this at all. So, I mean, you're going to connect with these type of people in Acapulco, and there's hope. I mean, despite the tyrannical state and mass like surveillance and all these bad things too, but there's awesome people like Patrick awakening and leading people and raising children, and people are going to be at this conference. So if you're coming, I hope you come meet people. Maybe you grab a microphone and start your own little conference or interview or do something, because there's a wave of freedom that's in high demand, and these ideas are becoming super attractive, as they always were, but now people are starting to be in demand and in need of them. The last thing I want to mention, I forgot to mention in the beginning, the not governor title. Can you just share about what that is, please?
Well, I mean, the initial inspiration came when I was running for not governor of Texas in the Libertarian Party, when I was in that phase of my activism where I was saying, a lot of people say you want to change things for the better, get involved. Don't just sit there and bitch about people that vote. And I was like, okay, well, let's see. Let's see if it's even possible to run a campaign for governor of Texas in a non-aggression principle compliant way, because I really didn't think it was possible at the time. But it started from a person that came to our meetup that was in the Libertarian Party, thinking that they were going to get easy recruits from the volunteers meetup. Boy, did they bite off more than they could, more than they expected. So they got a gubernatorial candidate that tried to run a non-aggression principle compliant campaign. The not governor title, I think, was initially inspired by Kokesh doing the not president thing. Mm-hmm. But I felt that the not governor is more poignant. It's more specific as to exactly what I am not going to do. Like, president is a president, but like a governor means to govern, to control you. And I am literally like, it fits my entire existence. I exist to literally not govern you. Like not governor is just, it became sort of what people started calling me after the campaign, and it just started being a thing that I go by, and boy, does it fit me. So that's kind of the story behind that.
Very cool. Yeah, that's great. And you did mention you're a big guy, so there's a presence with you. And then when you're a peaceful, loving man, it's like, oh man, like, this is awesome. So I think that might be another conversation, we can have in person, or a next conversation here. So if you're watching this, come see him on the main stage if you want. There's going to be a really cool conversation. We're talking about actually how to transfer freedom to the next generation and really how to make an impact. He mentioned like a legacy and leaving a kind of a splash in the universe with this quick life that we have. And I feel that same energy. I think a lot of people in this community, whether you're attending or not, feel that too. And so it's kind of like the candles in the dark. We're transferring the light to each other. And the more people we spread that light to in the room, then the darkness goes away, and we can have kind of this non-aggressive, peaceful community, whether it's on mass scale or little scale. So any final words, Patrick, before we disconnect for this conversation?
Yeah, I'll give a little teaser to something that we did last year in the kind of middle courtyard of the hotel. Last time we did a Change My Mind series. I don't know if you saw those, where we did a taxation is theft, change my mind, and we had people come up and try and debate me. Because cool. I find that, like much like Larkin found, that a lot of people are not very good at talking to normies about freedom, about voluntarism. And so yes. I decided to pull up the table and give people the opportunity to actually try and, flex their muscles on me without, the fear and sort of, baggage that comes with doing it with real personal relationships you have in the world. And I thought it was a fantastic success. We have several videos on the Disenthral YouTube channel. You can go back and look at those. Yeah. But this year we're also going to be doing something in the courtyard that will involve people wanting to participate, to sharpen maybe their discussion or even debate skills for those that are interested. Look for the guy with the weird white hair, and we might have something cool going on. So
yeah, that's great. I think this is a very important point to close on, as Larkin is doing and you're doing it. We have to actually converse with people, and preferably in a non-combative way, about these ideas. They're not going to get on TV. They're not going to be on radio in general, maybe some podcasts, but we are the messengers. If you accept that title, we're the ones we've been waiting for. And so we kind of got this philosophy in our head, and we want to communicate that to the world. And it is in these types of like friendly debates, where it's like a safe environment where you're not going to get slammed, or, you know, your brother or sister or parents aren't going to disown you and, you know, kick you out or whatever. It's like, yeah, let's have an actual sharpening of the iron, you know, as they say. So there's a lot of great things there. I hope when and if you show up, you come and talk with Patrick and whatever he's doing in the courtyard. There's going to be an open mic this year for adults. There's going to be a talent show for kids. There's going to be really cool things this year. So make sure you go to anarchapulco.com/schedule. The schedule is live when you're watching this video. And Patrick, thanks for taking some time to say hello. Thanks for coming down for Anarchapulco and for helping us spread the freedom, the peace, and the anarchy worldwide. We're going to see you all very soon on the beaches of Acapulco, Mexico at the world's premier Liberty Conference. See you all very soon. Bye.